Welcome to the Imposter Syndrome Club. I'm Alice Edie. I'm joined by Jessamy G, my friend, collaborator, co-host, hero, personal mentor. I don't know, all the good things.
Hi, beautiful. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm really good. I feel like I've got a million things to talk to
Tell me,
you about.
Go.
Do you want something dumb or something not? I was going to say smart. I'm not even sure that it's smart.
No.
Silly or serious?
Silly.
Okay, so I've been. How often do you go to Spotlight?
Zero time. I've been once since moving to Australia. It was a whirlwind of emotion. It was so fun, but I can't afford to go to places like Spotlight, which for non-Australian listeners is like a giant warehouse of craft, like broadly speaking sewing, but generally like craft stuff. And I go there and I go crazy and just buy like materials for imaginary like I'm not allowed.
Yeah, I do that. Like I will like something. It's like hard rubbish for me. I'm like, I'll hoard all of this stuff.
Yeah. It's bad.
Yeah.
So tell me about your trip to Spotlight.
Okay. Well, trips.
Oh wow.
So when like doing burlesque stuff, I would have to go to Spotlight fairly often to get material and stuff. But recently, because Dan's been making some like sound baffling for his room, we've had to take quite a few trips to Spotlight. And I don't know what it is, but walking in the doors to Spotlight is like entering some sort of fucking parallel universe. It's just like everyone in there is unhinged. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know what happens, but I feel like it is, like just entering into an alien universe where things like people have no sense of personal space, for one thing. But it's just, I don't know what it is about the place, but it's fucking.
I get it.
It's a weird
because
joint.
That's why I can't go. I would be one of those people. Like something, it's honestly like a frenzy. It's like a craft frenzy. And suddenly I walk in there and I'm like, maybe I am someone who's going to make my own Christmas cards. Maybe I am someone who's going to hand paint babushka dolls that all fit inside there. I'm like, it's fucked. I don't know, man. I'm sorry.
A guy who I later realized worked there, just like walking around talking to himself out loud. And I'm like, okay, maybe he's talking to another staff member that I can't see. No,
did he not have a little ear thing?
In Spotlight? No, I don't think they're that advanced. For what sort of fabric emergencies?
There's been a run on glue guns in Aisle 4. Sequins, we need sequins. Stat.
But that aside, I wanted to tell you something that I overheard in Spotlight that just brought me great delight. You know, when you just hear something that tickles you just right.
Yeah.
So there was a customer in there who was asking a young guy, one of the staff members there, for something, I don't know, like something in particular. And the guy, I think what he meant to say is, I don't know, that's not really what I specialize in. But instead what he said was, I don't know, that's not really what I'm known for.
What are you known for?
I just thought it was so gorgeous, this idea of like Spotlight celebrities, and some of them were like known for their prowess with curtain rods.
He's like, the rubber stamp aisle is really my area of expertise.
But anyway, so Spotlight has loomed large in my life for the last little while.
What were you, so you said it very casually, but I need to go back to the fact that you described Dan making sound baffling.
Yeah.
Like baffling is a noun that I should know. Is that sound absorber pad?
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure that I'm using the right terminology there. I think so.
Baffling it's such a great sound though.
Yeah. Like the word sounds like what it is.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it basically just like wooden frames with material covering them to absorb sound.
What else? What other crafts are going on in your world?
That's about it for now. Although I am re-inspired to start sewing again, because I don't need another thing on my plate.
Yeah.
But hey, like, why not? Because it's my birthday in a couple of weeks, and I want to make myself a birthday costume.
A birthday costume?
Yeah, man.
Do you have a vision for said costume? Is it like
No, not yet. I haven't sat down and thought about it properly yet, but it's going to be something fabulous. I love birthdays. I love my birthday, your birthday, anyone's birthday.
We
I'm
share
just
this.
into it.
This is a thing that we both, it's like, it literally is getting to celebrate someone for a day. And it feels to me similar to the way weddings are just great, where you're like, we all think all this amazing stuff about the beautiful people in our lives, but it's weird to just blurt it out constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. It's fucking great. And I highly recommend everyone should just say the nice things that they're thinking. But at the same time, it's really nice to have some kind of occasion that facilitates that. It's so good. And it's so good to give and receive.
Yeah, exactly. I enjoy them both in equal amounts. Like the other, stop me if I've spoken about this on the podcast before.
I would have no idea.
Great. Well, we'll see. It was Dan's birthday a couple of weeks ago. And so he's sort of mid-March, I'm mid-April, which means I've really got to like get my game on point for Dan's birthday because I will get what I give.
I mean, it's not transactional at all. I thought you were going to say some star sign thing. Be like, his birthday is mid-March, so he's a Piscatarius, and you know how they are around gifts. You know how materialistic those.
No, I think we're the same star sign. Anyway, I'm not an astrologist. Anyway, Dan's birthday. Oh yeah, so Dan historically has been someone who really downplayed his birthday. Was like, oh, I don't really care. Like, he's not someone who likes to like make a fuss or have a fuss made out of him. So like, oh, I don't really want to do anything. I don't really care. Blah, blah, blah. It's not a big deal.
Birthdays are not what he's known for.
They're not. Exactly. Birthdays are not what he's known for. But then sort of as the years went on, what started to happen was that because he had downplayed it so much for so many years, like on his birthday, the phone wouldn't ring after, you know what I mean? Like if you downplay it so much for so long, people forget. And I think he had sort of told himself that it didn't matter, and it didn't really until there was sort of nothing there. And then he's like, oh, actually this, like that actually doesn't feel good. Like that doesn't feel good for no one to wish you a happy birthday on your birthday.
It 100%. And I'm not saying that this was what Dan did, but I do think it's that thing of like a lot of us think we don't need a thing when it's being supplied by the people around us without us needing to ask for it. And it's only when that thing is removed from the external environment and you've never had to work for it or ask, and suddenly you're like, oh, this feels real bad.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what happened. And I think also like having maybe like thinking of like birthdays, like, oh, I've got to have a party and it's got to be a thing. It's like no one's going to like tell you how to do your birthday. Like it's about you. You do it however the fuck you want. If that's just having your two best mates and whiskey and oysters or whatever, then that's what you do. So I think that as well like sort of played into not wanting to celebrate it. So it was his 40th last year and I was like, we are abso-fucking-lutely not letting this go by with you not celebrating it, because you will regret it when it comes to the day and it's your 40th birthday and you haven't planned anything. You'll feel sad. So we're doing something. So we booked a weekend away in Rye or something. Unfortunately, I got COVID on Dan's 40th birthday.
Such a fucking classic COVID move, by the way.
Oh, such a dick. COVID, you fucking dick. Anyway, we ended up redoing it a couple of months later and it was lovely, lovely, blah, blah. I think that sort of like shifted his mindset around it a little bit as well. So this year again, and because his birthday was on a Friday, that's always fun because you can do something really fun on your actual birthday. I was like, cool, like what are we doing? I was getting closer to the time. He hadn't organised anything yet. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to take this upon myself to message like his friends, be like, just hold the date because otherwise people will make other plans. We just went out for like a super chill dinner with like a few of his best mates and his sister and her husband. But we just like, he really lent into it. So like the whole weekend, it was like Dan's birthday weekend. We didn't do anything crazy. We just like, we went to the beach. Yeah, we had oysters, like just things that he loves to do. And it was so fun. And we both had the best time because it was so, yeah, I guess like leaning into like celebrating him, but also it's just like celebrating being alive,
Yeah,
right? It's just
that's
like,
the
let's
thing.
just do the things that we love for a
Exactly.
weekend.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And I remember reading somewhere there are studies around how it changes the texture of an experience if you're there for a reason. And it can
that's
be the
interesting.
reason itself does not matter. So if you have a group of friends, you're going to meet 5 friends for dinner on Saturday night. That'll be a fun dinner. You can literally tack onto that like any reason. Like come over for dinner. I'm testing out a new recipe and I really like to try it with you guys. Or it's someone's birthday. Or I just did my last exam for something. Like the reason doesn't fucking matter. But
Wow.
just having the purpose on some level, like attaching a purpose to a gathering just makes everyone enjoy it, X amount more.
That is fascinating.
Isn't it? I remember reading it. I think there's a book called The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. I don't know if you've seen. I think she used to work in like really hectic like negotiations, like Middle Eastern or somewhere where there's really fraught, complex political stuff. She was like a negotiator. I think I'm probably getting the exact details wrong, but she came from that and then went into like facilitation and hosting and just the art of creating spaces that bring out the best in people gathering, like gathering with intention, which is just a thing that is so weird to me how little thought and conversation goes on around like designing events just in general. But anyway, and I'm pretty sure it was her a point that she was making. And I remember reading it and just feeling intuitively it landed. I was like, absolutely. It's always, you can have the same group of friends, you love them. I'm like, if we're going out for someone's birthday, it's 50% more fun. If we're celebrating someone's engagement or I don't know, someone's cat got its degree in naturopathy. Naturopathy. But yeah.
The cat is going to come for you on that one. They're very particular.
The cat is currently like saging the room before it puts some crystals in the corner. I'm like, I don't know.
Because we were sort of thinking about that and reflecting on it at the end of the weekend, like how much of a lovely time we'd had, but also on the fact that like it wasn't really that different to what we do on lots of weekends. It was just like I guess maybe that was it. It was the purpose.
Reason. There was a reason you were doing it.
Yeah, and maybe being like intentionally happy, if that makes sense. Like we're like really focusing on the mood being great because we're in like fuck. Where's my naturopathist cat?
Good thing our job is not talking. We're fine.
No one will notice, right? Seamless.
This is related, but maybe like not quite the same thing. But so around something I've also been thinking about a lot recently is again Priya Parker, but she speaks about being intentional around who you invite and also who you don't invite.
Yeah.
And how kind of socially that's such a taboo. Like we really have quite a problem not inviting people to certain events for good reason. I think it stems from kindness and none of us like that feeling of being left out. It fucking stings. It sucks.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good impulse that people have. But also there is something like really when you are very intentional around like who is there and who's not there, you also make the people you've invited feel chosen and really special, and it changes the energy that they bring to that event. And kind of I thought it was a really interesting point.
Yeah, that stuff can be, I think, less so as you get older because you're less likely to have people. So when you're younger, you sort of like move in bigger groups of people, and there might be people out of that bigger group that you feel more or less connected to, but you would invite the whole group to something like a birthday because like it's not like you have a problem with these people and their feelings might be hurt if you didn't, and it's fine. As I have gotten older, I've become more and more intentional about the people that I spend time with because I've just noticed how much it matters, like how much of an impact it has on my life. So I think it's easier in the sense that like the fillers
The tier 2 friends.
Oh God. But you do like you edit, right?
Well,
as you get older because
and also availability when you're all students, everyone and you make a drinks plan on Wednesday night.
Yes.
Everyone can fucking come. No one's
Yeah.
got anything really else to do. But it also like I think there's so many factors that play into
And also like to be clear, I'm joking when I say feelers, but also it's like I would be that to them. You know what I mean? Like
I don't even think, I mean, you might be joking. I'm not joking. That's okay. I feel like it's okay. It's just okay. Everyone's going to have different levels of closeness with different people, not because of any like evaluate. It just happens this way.
Can I tell you about a really weird situation that I had when I was in my 20s?
Yes.
I don't know if this is going to make me sound like a massive dick or not. Let's find out. So
Let's open it.
Let's open the door.
It to the broader public.
I'm probably about 24, 25 at this time. This is like basically this exact situation. There was a girl who was like a friend of a friend. She was fine. I found her quite grating. She was very intense, like the sort of person that you would meet and then be like, let's exchange numbers. Let's hang out like 20,000 times. I'm like, our relationship has not built naturally yet.
Yeah.
Like I don't really know anything about you, and what I have seen, I'm not like super vibing with. Yeah. But that's just part of her personality. Yeah. I'm sure some people who meet her with that energy would love it.
The right friend for her will love that.
Right. Anyway, so on this like inviting, not inviting thing, for my birthday around that time, I was having drinks somewhere, whatever, and I didn't invite her. But I also didn't know her very well. Yeah. Like she was friends with my friends. I felt like it wasn't a weird thing to not invite her. I'd met her maybe a handful of times, but she was sort of like moving with that same, like one of the groups of friends that I would often go out with.
She's like group adjacent.
Yeah. Anyway. So I didn't invite her, but then she like basically asked to be invited, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
And that was a very, very awkward conversation, but what I didn't understand then and still don't understand now, why the fuck would you want to go somewhere you know you were intentionally not invited to? Anyway, this is just a weird thing that happened. I guess it's just two like very different personality types trying to work out a weird social thing together.
I mean, yeah, I think that there is something to, I feel like my brain is going in like 3 different directions with it, because part of me kind of loves that she asked, although I think that is with the associated principle that if she is prepared to ask, she needs to be prepared to hear no.
Yeah.
Because the other part of that is like it puts you in it creates like a very complex like social pressure to surely she knows it's hard to say no to that, right?
Yeah. So this is what I actually don't, I mean, obviously because I was the one on the other side of it, but I think if I was even hearing this story from someone else, I don't love at all the fact that she asked, because that is putting a lot of pressure
there is
on me. And then because it's like if you're just not invited, you go, oh, well, I wasn't invited to that thing. Like we all have not been invited to things. Yeah. You don't have to actually I don't have to look her in her fucking eyes and say, no, I don't want, I didn't say it like that, but essentially that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Like, no, I'm intentionally not inviting you because I don't want you there.
It takes it from a neutral to like an active negative. You're like, because the first one is like, these are the people I invited, and you and the other 7 billion people on the planet are just the big group of people that happen to not be invited to this. Yeah. But that does make it specifically, it takes it from like, oh, I just didn't think of you as part of the guest list to like, I actively do not want you there.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that made it a lot weirder. And also I'm pretty sure like obviously this is like 12 plus years ago. I don't really remember the details of it, but I can't imagine I would have been like super actively not inviting her anyway. Like she just wasn't, like we just kind of weren't friends.
Well, like at some point.
It was fine. It's not like I put a lot of thought into it until she made it weird. And then I was like, well, now we all have to make it weird.
I think that maybe where I'm okay with someone asking is I think it would depend on the size of the gathering and the location as well. Like if someone was having a dinner or drinks with a group of people, like less than 20 people, then you wouldn't ask. And if it was at like a bar or an open venue,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But if it's their birthday, do you know what I mean? Like, do you know how? Like,
Okay.
it's so like I think if it was just like you're having an event, right? For like it's summer, we're having a summer party. Like that is less weird.
Yeah. No. Okay. No, you're right. I think like so. Here's the question. What if someone who was invited messaged you to ask if they could bring a date that you have never met before?
Yeah, I mean if it was someone that they were seeing, I suppose, but that's a different situation.
Well, that's different. Yeah, I would also be more fine with that because I'm like, well, I don't know that person, so I couldn't invite them. But if you did know this person and still didn't, you're like, no, I had all of the available information and still chose to not invite you to this thing. Read the fucking room.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I feel like we've given this story way too much airtime considering how long it was and how inconsequential it was to my life.
No, but I could honestly, like I could talk about this stuff for fucking hours. It fascinates me so much. And I just like, this is not at all that, but to do with invites and kind of letting friends in. So we decided there's a group of my very close girlfriends who now, you know, this time 3 years ago, it was like my crew of people that I was seeing weekly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in our kind of circle of friends, there's been like 3 divorces, 2 kids, and 2 people moving out of Melbourne. So like that unit is kind of not for any lack of love, but just pure logistical, adult, boring, pragmatic reasons. Like that dynamic has suffered. And I think there was a lag where we didn't notice and we were all so busy managing our own shit that it kind of fell to the side. And now we've all reached a point where we're feeling the gap in our lives and actively now putting in the steps and the effort to address that and kind of find what this looks like now.
Yeah.
So the system we've come up with is that it's going to be a set date. I think in German it's called like a Stammtisch, or it's like a table.
That's cool. Of course there's a German word for it.
Yeah. I mean, exactly, right? And I think
it.
it's supposed to be like when you are a regular at a bar or a restaurant and you have a standing reservation at that table. So like imagine you're in like a small village and like you and your mate know that every night after work at the pub, you meet up at like 6 p.m. and you have a beer together.
Yeah.
And that's your spot. And it's just kind of like a standing reservation.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's so cute. So we were like, we're basically doing a version of a Stammtisch, and it'll be the first Wednesday or first Thursday of every month. Non-negotiable, because the second you fucking start negotiating, there's always going to be someone who can't make it, and then we're back to never seeing each other, trying to find this like democracy thing of whatever.
Yep.
So we did it. The first one was last month, and it was really fun. But what ended up happening, and it's also like we're all fucking working it out. Like it's a new idea for us as a group. But what ended up happening was kind of half the people couldn't make it. Fine, that's going to happen. 3 of us could. But of the 3 who could, both of the other 2 happened to have family members staying with them.
Mm-hmm.
And these are family members who happen to also be women. So it's kind of not confusing the like sense of the sort of girl catch-up vibe.
Yeah.
Who we've met before, both really lovely, right? But, and this is something that it's not a, like I'd happily say this to them. I mean, I'm saying it on a fucking podcast.
Yeah.
It's not a secret.
You better be happy.
But what it meant was that of 5 of us having dinner, 40%, two of the 5 are not part of that crew.
Yeah.
So actually what was intended on like reconnecting a group of close friends was a lovely dinner. But that is a very different energetic. Like that is then you're back to being your social self, right? You're back to making conversation with someone who you don't know that well, asking polite questions, like doing that dance, which is totally fine, but was not the contract.
Yeah. This is fascinating to me because what I've noticed is that people have really different like preferences and tolerances around that sort of stuff. So for me, if I've arranged to meet up with just you, and I show up and it's you plus another person, I'm like, that's not what I was expecting and not what I was expecting from an energy perspective, and I wanted to catch up with just you. I had a friend who would do that constantly. So I would think it was just going to be me and her catching up and get there, and she's like, oh, I invited blah, blah, and blah, blah, or someone else was still there. Like it was just, and it wasn't, like I don't think she intended it. She just had no concept that would bother me. And I think that's so interesting that like those dynamics to some people matter a lot and others don't. And I don't know, maybe it did also matter to your friends. It was just the logistic thing of
I think also,
the family there.
yeah. I mean, I think also for them, I very much understood, and I can understand how those choices are made, because essentially if you have a guest and a family member staying and then you've got a dinner plan with your mates, actually one of two things is going to happen, where like the other option was that they wouldn't have come, right?
Yeah.
And I think I think it was also the right call in that kind of way, where they were like, okay, we're trying to set up this cadence of us meeting up again. We've all spoken about how much we miss each other. I don't want to fucking bail in the first one. Do you guys mind if I bring a mate? Also, probably if it'd just been one of them, it wouldn't have had that kind of weight to it. But it ended, I think it was just, I mean, it's life and it happens. And no, it was still a really lovely night. But I was interested in, it really got me thinking, excuse me, like it really got me thinking just around how there are so many missed opportunities to connect with people when you don't really design the meeting with intention. And people don't like doing it because we feel icky around over-engineering catch-ups or social engagements, but there've just been so many times where I'm like, every person here is amazing, interesting, cool, funny, and I'm leaving feeling like lonely because I didn't get to any of the real stuff.
You're still hungry. Emotionally hungry.
That's such a good way of saying it. I'm like, but you were right there. And like, we just chat. I mean, sometimes you want a big party and you just want to chat about dumb stuff. That's important too, but.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? And because I think, I don't know whether it's like to do with introversion, extroversion, or it's just like different preferences. But I feel like some people, the engineering is less necessary with the dynamics I have with some people. So I'm like, we'll know, like we'll get it. Like I'd be quite certain that like you and I would be pretty aligned with things when it came to that. Like I don't think I would walk into a social situation or something that we'd planned and be surprised by something that turned up. But there are other people where that wouldn't be the case. And that's absolutely like, don't love them any more or less. It's just like different personality things. But yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating, isn't it? Like what is the thing that, I don't know what I'm trying to say, that causes people to be like aware or not of those dynamics, or even just, or like bothered or not, or you know, I don't know.
And what are the ways in which you can, like, what are the things in that space, like the way you phrased that I loved about leaving feeling hungry still, that such a beautiful description, because that is how it feels. And like, what are the ways, what are the things you can bring into those spaces that help you get that nourishment that you're looking for? Because obviously you can't, there are certain social interactions, you can't design it. You can choose, when I say design it, you can choose who you invite, you can choose where you host it, you can choose all of these things. But I mean, mostly you can't, right? So like, what do you do to make sure that you get something real? And also
sometimes the thing is something that doesn't immediately feel appealing. Like I'll give you a good example, because I think sometimes it's time, like something that has enough time built in for you to be able to warm into those conversations. And it's not like we go, we do the dinner, we pay the bill, we leave. But that's not something that I necessarily always feel up for. So this is like pre-COVID, I think, but a friend of mine was getting married up on the peninsula somewhere. And this is like a friend from high school. So there were like a big group of people going. And like, oh, we'll book a big Airbnb and we'll all stay there together. And to me, I'm like, that sounds like a fucking nightmare. Like to be to be in a house.
Nope.
But like even though I love people and I'm a social person, I definitely need like my own space, like retreat space. So the idea of a whole weekend in a house full of people, I was like, oh my God, that sounds horrific, but also very practical, and like that was the way of doing it. So I was like, fine. And I felt really nervous about it actually. But these are people that I'd known for like 20 plus years. So when I got there, I was like, oh, that's right. I love you.
This is
great.
Yeah.
And I actually had the fucking best time because it was just like the pace of this stuff that we're talking about now, like the opportunity to feel really connected to people, because like, you know, like I went and like jumped in bed with two of my girlfriends in the morning and we're having a little like gossip and snuggle in bed, like those sorts of things that you would do as a teenager, doing as an adult. And it was so nice and so nourishing, and a lot of just like, you know, because it was, I think we were there for maybe certainly 2 nights, possibly 3. And because there was like the night before the wedding, the night after the wedding, and then they had like a recovery thing the next day. So there was plenty of just like lounging around time, like playing a board game or watching a movie.
So good.
And that is something that I like actively like wanted to reject, because I was like the idea of, like being there for the weekend is what I mean. But it was the absolute best thing for feeling for, like I felt so full at the end of that weekend. But had it been up to me, I wouldn't have done it that way. So it's tricky, like trying to balance like what you need with what you crave, which we've spoken about before, I think.
Yeah. I can't think of a concrete example, but what you've just described, I've definitely had that exact trajectory of I resist that. I'm like, the first thing my brain does, I'm like, oh my God, then it's going to be like fucking group activities. Now we're all going on a hike. What if I don't want to go on a hike? I'm like, it's going to be shared everything. Like, how am I going to poo? Am I just not going to poo the entire fucking weekend? I'm like, there's so many things. And then you get there and you're like, oh, we're all adults. Everyone's fine.
It's fine.
If you don't want to go on the hike, you don't go on the hike. I'm like, pooping's fine. You'll just be fine. Go to the petrol station. Worst case, you've got a car. You'll be okay.
Poop in your car.
Just dig a hole in the garden. You'll be fine. There are so many ways to solve this problem. But it is so, I think that the best connecting, my favorite thing in the whole world is the morning after you've had like the big, I know we've spoken about this, like the catch up, you've had the wine, you wake up, you're slightly dusty, slightly hungover, you're not wearing a bra yet, no one's wearing makeup, it's just like ponytails and hoodies, and you're making coffee after coffee after coffee and just sitting in the kitchen and just talking, and like it's like midday, no one's brushed their teeth yet because you've just been sitting there.
And it's a thing that you get so much as a kid because you're living in share houses or you're staying at each other's houses a lot or whatever, and you just don't get the opportunity to do it as an adult. And also, like, you know, if you were doing it a lot, that wouldn't be great.
Yeah.
But it becomes then a thing, like, rather than remembering that it feels nice, you're like, oh, but like, oh, I won't be near my stuff.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I won't be in my own bed. And you know, and then, my brain's ability to catastrophize a situation is remarkable. Remarkable. It's like, I don't know what I thought would be so terrible about being in a house with people I fucking love and have known for over half my life. What about that is bad?
Yeah, I don't know.
And what about, like, what part of me would think that, like, if I did or didn't want to do something, that anyone would, like, be upset or no, like, that we're all, like, reasonable adults who, like, don't give a shit what I do or don't do. They'll be like, oh, you don't want to? Yeah, great.
Yeah, cool. Read your book.
The end.
Yeah, read your book on the couch. Do you think that it's maybe for me, it feels like it maybe touches on having had that feeling as like a teenager going away with a friend and a friend's parents. But obviously at that stage, you're in this awkward moment of you're essentially a child, but you are independent, but you're subject. You still fall under the law of someone else's parents and someone else's family. And just that, I like that to me, I can kind of really remember that claustrophobia of, and you're just so awkward in your body anyway.
Yeah.
And that for me, I just remember like times where I felt very out of control and very disempowered. I'm like, I don't have my stuff. It's not my house. It's not my space. I've got to be polite the whole time. That that's the only thing I can think of. Like that's the only time it's ever been an issue. But I'm like, well, Alice, it's been 20 years since you've been a teenager, so relax.
It's probably, I don't think I did that. I can think of one time that I went away with someone else's family as a kid. I think for the most part, it was either like when I was really little and then it was a collection of families. So my family my whole family was still there. Or like there's one time I can remember going to a friend's beach house with their family and that's it. But I was thinking, speaking of other people's parents, so on the street that we live on is a dead-end street and there's a bunch of kids that are always out playing. So they're really, really lovely kids. During lockdown, they like built a ramp and were like doing jump. Dan and I came out once and there was like two of the smallest kids like lying next to the ramp. And we were like, do we? We're like, nah, I think we just let this play out as it's going to play out. No one died as far as I'm aware.
That's amazing. You're like, not my problem.
Yeah, not my problem. Anyway, so there's a really nice vibe out there and all of the kids played together and it's really sweet. Anyway, one of the places across the road must have booked a hard rubbish collection because they've got a whole bunch of stuff out on the street at the moment. And in the afternoon yesterday, I just heard the guy across the road like screaming at the kids like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you can't do, like, don't touch that. This is rubbish. You can't be making cubby house out of it. Put that back the way that it was. And I peeked through the blinds and when he first started yelling and looked down and just saw like a couple of the kids froze and still getting yelled at by this guy who he's the dad of one of the kids, but not the kids he was yelling at. And remembering that very specific terror, like stomach dropping terror of being yelled at by an adult who's not your parent. Like being yelled at by someone else's mum or dad was just so fucking scary. And just like, and I put myself like in that kid's body as I was looking out the window. I'm like, oh, you poor. I mean, like, I imagine the rage coming from my neighbor was because like it would have been really fucking dangerous. Like there would have been sharp stuff. And so he just would have lost it in the moment because he'd been like, oh my God, something happens to one of these kids and it's my rubbish out there. I'm going to feel awful. But it just came out as like blind rage.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I feel like as a kid, you get so immune to your own parents shitting on you, but the second it's your best mate's mum.
Oh my God, it's terrible. And I think you also like you have to kind of do something pretty significant for someone else's parent to yell at you. Like for a parent to yell at someone else's kid, I think you have to do something like either very dangerous, so like the yelling is just coming from a safety concern or like something real bad.
I'll never forget my mom. I wasn't even a kid. I think I was 15 or 16, and me and my best friend Bianca had been out drinking cheap wine like on a Saturday or whatever. And we'd come back. We were in my room and it was just like, it was the classic like two little scruffy punk teens. We'd put on like a bunch of like, I don't know, some whatever punk music, maybe listening, drinking, whatever, like had way too much. And I can't remember the details, but essentially at some point my mom realized that I think I'd had to go out. She'd called me down for like dinner or something. Bianca had stayed in the room and we were fucked. I mean, we were like, like children still, I guess, physically. Anyway, and like I'd gone back to my room and my mom came in and like the place was just like trash. It was a mess. It was like the bottles, it just like reeked of alcohol. We'd been smoking out the window. Like it was just like in the house.
Why did we do that as teenagers? We thought that like no one would know.
So dumb. Just didn't think. My mom bursts in. She's fuming, so pissed off. Bianca had been on the bed and just stays dead still, like pretends she's passed out. Basically, that was her strategy. But it was just like she was just lying on the bed and just froze, like with her eyes closed. My mom like shits all over me from this dizzying height, like unleashes all of it, and it's just going on and on and on. And I'm like drunk and trying to like keep it together, like withstanding all of this, and like it felt like 10 hours. It was, I'm sure, 5 minutes. But like after this deluge, my mom like turns around, storms out, and then like immediately opens the door again and just turns around and goes, "And Bianca, I know you're awake." And it slams the door and leaves.
Oh, but I would have played dead too.
Yeah, I mean, it was the only way. It honestly just felt like her brain was like, what do you do in case of a bear attack? Like just this deep primal, like the only way out of, like you can't fight the lion. You can't fight the bear. Like
the flight, fight or freeze. Yeah. She was freeze. Oh man. Oh my goodness.
So we kicked off this long and winding journey of a podcast with you giving me two options.
Oh yeah.
What's the non-silly option?
Okay, so well, there are a few things because as if you listen to last week's episode, you'll know that I'm training for a marathon at the moment. Because of this, my podcast consumption has gone up significantly. So there are a few things that I've heard on various podcasts that I wanted to talk to you about. But before that, I reflected on something very interesting as I was running yesterday, in that it occurred to me. So again, sorry to repeat myself, but we went over it briefly last week that I'm training for this marathon. I fell a little bit behind in my training, but I'm getting back into it now, and I think I've caught it just in time to be able to get there. This is the third marathon that hopefully I will run. The first one I did on my own. The second one I did with Dan, and this one I'm doing on my own. And the first one was a very significant, profound, life-changing experience for me. Like the physical and mental challenge of it was incredibly significant. And then the one that I did with Dan was significant in a different way because it's something we worked on and did together. But what I'd forgotten because of the middle, last time being with Dan, that for me, after I sort of run for a certain amount of time or a certain amount of kilometers, and I guess it's got something to do with a certain amount of physical exhaustion or whatever, I start processing things emotionally that I hadn't before.
Oh, wow.
And I felt a lot of COVID stuff was sort of coming up and starting to process. But what I also thought was very interesting, because I was meant to do this same marathon last year and the date kept getting closer and closer, and I was just can't help but notice I'm not running. Can't help but notice I'm not doing anything about this. And the same thing almost happened this year. I'd started but then fell behind. And I wondered if potentially somewhere my body remembered that that's what happens when I run those distances and was nope, we don't want to go there.
Wow.
That's too much of a Pandora's box. We don't want to open it. Maybe I just got lazy.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I just thought it was an interesting, I was I forgot about this part of it. When you do it alone is very, very different to doing it with someone else.
That makes so much sense though, because it is I mean, you would, when you reach a certain threshold of physical exhaustion, so you just don't have the resources to suppress stuff anymore, so it comes out.
Yeah.
Which is I'm sure part of what makes it so amazing is if you can take yourself there and help yourself through that and be kind to yourself through whatever that is, that would be an incredibly transformative and powerful experience. But also, with any tools, if you're not equipped to, if you don't have the resources you need to hold whatever is going to bubble up, I can very much understand why your body's no, we're not going to open that box.
Yeah, we're not ready. So we'll see if I have an emotional breakdown in the next couple of weeks. That's why.
Sweet content, Jessamy.
Oh yeah. Get ready, guys. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird how much I forgot. I remembered that it was a profound experience, but I think more I remember more about being really proud that I got through the physical, and mental thing of you have to keep going. I think it was so familiar, the feeling when it came up. I was
hello, old friend.
Hey, buddy. Yeah. So I'm kind of excited because I think I'd been, and we've spoken about it a few times, like how, like being so aware that there is like trauma and shit in my body to be processed from lockdowns and COVID times. And like, I don't know, like at what point it's going to surprise me and come out.
But I suppose it's maybe also a way of thinking about it is like, in a way, how people avoid certain kinds of medical tests when you don't want an answer. Like you're like, but the thing is, the test is not going to give you the disease. Like whatever is happening inside you is already happening. It is in fact already, if it's I don't know, just for like a trauma, and that can mean anything, physical, emotional, whatever. Like if that is a thing that is active within your system, it is hurting you regardless, whether you know, maybe below the level of consciousness, but it is affecting your world. And it's a scary thing to, when you know you're going to engage in a behavior that's going to make facing that unavoidable. But I mean, it's more respect to you for doing it, and it's fucking great.
Yeah, but it's also it's a positive, pleasant feeling currently.
It just, I think like with these things, it's like anything powerful deserves a healthy level of respect and handle with care. You know, it's not it's not to be reckless about it. I think that a lot of people, or I feel like I hear a lot this narrative around that just bringing stuff up is automatically therapeutic, or speaking about a thing is in some way automatically cathartic or helpful. And I just actually don't believe that. Not that I'm a psychologist, so who gives a fuck what I believe. But that is just in my opinion, I think people can be really reckless with bringing up, like if you are not equipped to deal with a thing, especially like talking, you know, with someone else. Like I guess that's why they're professionals who do this.
Did I ever tell you about this fucked like gym outing we've been on at my old gym? This is so horrifying. So occasionally they would book these little like gym outing things where like maybe you'd go rock climbing, or we did the like what do you call it, like obstacle course thing, the ninja warrior course thing. Anyway, doesn't matter. So
wrong crowd.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
Sure.
But cute. So we do all fun little things. And one of them was to do like sort of like Wim Hof style. Well, this is what we thought it was. Like Wim Hof style breathing techniques and an ice bath. I was like, cool, that sounds interesting. That'll be fun. And while Dan didn't go to that gym, he was really interested in that stuff like cold immersion and breathing techniques and stuff. So he came too. So that's what I was expecting. What we got was some fucking charlatan dickhead. Sorry. It makes me really angry because it's so, like what he was running there and presumably still running, so fucking dangerous. So he has no qualifications. I mean, he's probably got a qualification as a personal trainer, right?
Yeah, he's like listened to a bunch of audiobooks on.
Yeah. You know the guy. You can I bet most of our listeners like picture the guy,
Picture that guy.
And you probably met him at Confest or Rainbow Serpent. Like we know the guy, right? Fancies himself a bit of a guru, you know, that like could be a cult leader in another life, that kind of wanker. So as opposed to it just like learning techniques to like get your heart rate under control and all that sort of stuff, it was like a bit more like woo-woo breathing stuff. Even then I'm like, that's okay. That's cool. Fine. Yeah. I don't mind that. But he was like, it's really important that we like, you know, connect together. We're going to go through this experience together. So we'll do this. And then he's like, I want you to like get into pairs and turn to your partner and tell them about a childhood trauma.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Dude.
No.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
No, that's not the sort of like get to know you partner work that you do. That's not being like, what's your favorite color?
What's a fun fact about you that
Two
no
truths
one
and a
knows?
lie. Yeah.
It's so irresponsible. It's like
so irresponsible.
You don't have the it's like you don't have the license to handle weapons like that. Like you're just
Exactly.
not equipped for the power of the thing that you're invoking in that moment.
Yeah. And it makes me so angry even thinking about it, because you don't have the tools. You can open that box, and then you're just sending those people out into the world with this box that you've just opened. And bear in mind, you've just done this breathing stuff that's altered your state a little bit, so you're probably feeling particularly vulnerable and heightened anyway. And then to be like, just share with a friend about your fucking childhood trauma.
Yeah,
we just, so it was Dan and I and another girl, and Senna went like, no.
Yeah.
Like this is insane.
Yeah.
And then had an ice up. Anyway, but that stuff,
it's wild,
exists in the world, and it makes me, I think that's what can be so dangerous about those sort of things, because there's like one school of thought that's like, it doesn't matter if you don't believe the same thing that someone else believes. Like if it makes them happy to go and do what, if you go to think about going to like psychics or I don't know, whatever. Like I think part of me is like, if it makes them happy, whatever. But then there's another part of me that's like, but could it be hurting them in some way if someone is not qualified and is like giving someone hope for something that isn't true?
Totally. And that's the thing where it's like, I mean, I guess it's a case by case basis, but I agree with that thing where there are a lot of things that I feel personally quite cynical about, but also if that is helpful for someone else, if that's, I mean, I believe a million fucking ridiculous things. Like I'm so, like on one hand, like so uber, like I don't have any kind of like hard sort of like religious or anything like that background. And I'm consider myself anyway, like fairly logical in my worldview. And at the same time, like the most superstitious person you've ever met.
Sure.
But while recognizing that it's completely made up in my own head and is not in fact like real.
Yeah.
That's just, I think our brains, I think that we've got a degree of wiring that needs to believe, or we attribute causality to things that are just correlated. We find two things in the world that are happening at the same time. We make the connection, and it's very hard to break that. And if there are ways of doing that that get you through the day and don't hurt you or anyone else, fucking more power to you. Like believe whatever the fuck you want. But yeah, like you say, when there's an exchange of money is usually like the first red flag. And then like to do that recklessly, or to do that without the self-awareness that you don't know fully what you're doing. Like you're not, and I always imagine this with stuff like this kind of ayahuasca tourism that happens. I mean, I haven't been, and I'm sure that there are plenty examples of that being really helpful and incredibly generous and beautiful and like a profound experience. But there is also just a lot of people preying on other people's vulnerability. Yeah. And I'm like, that's big shit. You're opening up huge wounds in people that you are not like a doctor to sew back up again. Yeah. Super unethical.
I think even with what do you call it? Like the silent retreats that you go on, Vipassana.
Yeah.
I have not had this. So this is like a friend of a friend. So my friend's friend, and this has happened to two people that she knows, has gone on one of those retreats that was perhaps not run by people who were super thoughtful about how they put it into place. Because even that, like that's like being alone with your thoughts. I imagine it's kind of similar to the running thing in a way, but just like heaps more intense because it's days rather than a couple of hours. And you're in space with other people and you're doing other things around it too. But that similarly like opens up things that if not properly addressed or guided, like what you need to do on your way out of that, she had two friends sort of like lose it a bit upon coming back from those things and like cut off friends and make really poor choices in their lives. It's sort of like, people say don't make decisions about something after like a big life event because you're going to be heightened and potentially not make the right decision.
Don't get a tattoo after a breakup. Right. That's what we're saying. You know who you are.
Also, do not cut the fringe. Don't cut the fringe.
It's growing out, okay?
That wasn't meant to be a personal attack, but it was true.
It's always always true. It's always true. Even as I was asking for it, I was like, oh, will you please cut me a fringe so I can spend the next 6 months regretting it every day?
I think it's you're like, do you think this is like I don't know, what was it, like a cry for help or something? I'm like, yeah, but I support it.
It's like, it's not a permanent, there are no permanent scars. So of all the cries for help, this is, I mean, you're speaking to the girl who dyed her hair purple not 3 months ago. So,
Purple's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. It washes out. Yeah, exactly. Like these are decisions that are very easily reversible or like just, grow out in a few months' time. But like moving house, like, or cutting off whole groups of friends and stuff. I think, and I don't know what the answer to this is, because they're not things that would be easy to regulate in terms of how like the industry would run. But there doesn't seem to even be any acknowledgement in these sort of worlds that like you're fucking with your psyche, like you're potentially doing some real psychological, not damage, but you're opening things that need to be managed once opened.
It's really interesting. So I've actually nearly been on 2 Vipassana retreats, one in Cape Town, one here, that both of which, for reasons beyond my control, I had to cancel on like within a week of them starting. And it's been a thing that I've been so interested in doing, and I've had quite a few friends do it, and the range of experience.
Yeah.
Like I've definitely heard both versions. I've heard people have this kind of like incredibly profound experience, but also people coming out of it feeling quite shaken. And I think that part of it is also like us wanting to label a process good or bad. And I think it is undoubtedly powerful. I think it's an incredibly powerful tool that can really be life-changing. But like you say, I think just because something can be powerful, I think that there's almost potentially, I think people experience shame around not getting it right, especially anything spiritual, but like meditation as well. Like, so when you have something that is beautiful, like a Vipassana retreat kind of should be, and I'm sure is, but if someone's personal journey of that wasn't the enlightening experience that they were sold, I think that people tend to take that on board as a reflection of their failure rather than a system that didn't necessarily support them in the way that they needed. So maybe that's why that conversation doesn't happen as much, because people are like, I guess I fucked it. Like if I'm all over the place now, like I didn't do it right. That's classic me, like not doing the retreat right.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. I think in this instance, and just to say as well, like I've also had plenty of other friends who've gone on and found it wonderful, challenging. Yes, like heaps of different versions of it. I don't think what you were just describing then, I don't think that's the case with these people. I think they did think they did it right, but they thought the answer that they were given was to fuck up their lives essentially upon return. I mean, so it wasn't like, oh no, now I'm a mess because this has sort of fucked me up a little bit. It's like, yes, the thing that's spoken to me has told me to like cut off all my family and friends.
Which is hard. I mean, just for the sake of playing devil's advocate, like there's part of me that's like, given that our lives are only our story of our lives anyway, even if you come out of something and burn down your whole life, and to any outsider, you're like, well, that's a fuck up. I'm like, I guess if their story is that's like if the sense that they make out of that is positive, I'm like, well, it becomes really hard to be like, well, you're making the wrong choices. I'm like, yeah, you're making the wrong choice by cutting off your family. But if their experience of that is that it's ultimately positive, I mean, like, I don't know. I'm like, was it the wrong choice?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure for these people it is not a positive end to that story. I get what you're saying, and I
just
agree.
For the sake of
if
like
they were fictional characters, I'd be like, sure.
Yeah.
But having some more insight into the actual human being on the other end of it, I'd be like, no, that's not a good idea. Something bad has happened. Yeah. Anyway. Lovely. Here's a more positive. Do you want to hear one of my beautiful takeaways from one of the beautiful podcasts I listened to this week? Okay, so this is like sort of relevant in the sense that it's kind of like about like self-love and self-care. So we can tie that tie that into this loosely. Who fucking cares? It's our podcast. We can do whatever we want.
Do whatever you goddamn please.
Motherfuckers.
Tangents in all directions.
Yeah. So this was on the comedian Andrew Santino's podcast, and he was interviewing another comedian called Rick Glassman, who I don't know, but he was very funny. And he was sort of talking about his kind of journey with self-love, I guess, which is not like, you don't often hear comedians talking so earnestly. And you could tell it was like a little uncomfortable in a way, but it's something he'd been working on. And he'd sort of tried the like, you know, mantra thing, like I am great, I am worthy. And he's like, I saw the value in doing it, but it never worked because I didn't believe it, because like they weren't like, I would never talk like that.
Yes.
Like they're not my words. I could see that it was valuable, and I wanted to do something to bring me into this like, sort of like building myself up, loving myself kind of thing. But that was just like felt icky and weird and was never going to work. And he was also someone who suffered from stage fright really, really badly, as I'm finding out so many comedians do. Like the 2 seconds before they go on stage, you're like, I fucking hate this.
Yeah.
I hate it so much. But really suffered badly. And then one day he sort of had like the thought come into his mind that was, I think I'm meant to be nervous. And that became his little like self-love mantra thing, which is not the same as like, I'm the best, I'm the blah. It was like, oh, actually, I'm just meeting myself where I am. I'm just a nervous guy.
Yeah.
I'm meant to be nervous. There's not like, I don't have to stop this. I don't have to pretend that I'm not. I don't have to try not to be nervous. I'm just meant to be nervous. I care, and I'm a nervous guy.
Yeah.
And so finding the like self-love or whatever mantra that's like in your actual voice that works for you and is realistic for you, that was the thing that he found so empowering. And it wasn't the like, you know, doing the power stance things and being like, I am Wonder Woman or Superman or whatever. It's just like, no, I'm meant to be nervous.
Do you think it also works on a double layer where the first layer is like it actually diffuses the situation and you believe it because, like you're saying, it's in your voice, it's to use the buzzword authentic, but like it is in fact how you would speak to someone. So it's actually going to land for you. And then on top of that, there's like another level where it builds, the fact of it working reinforces a system where you are trusting yourself more. Because the first one, not only is the first one not working, like if you're like, you know, if I look in the mirror and do an affirmation that's like, Alice, like you are worthy of love. I'm like, that may or may not be true. I don't know. Hopefully it's true.
It's very true.
It's very thanks, Des. But like like anything, right? It's just a fact I'm stating, may or may not be true. I hope it's true. But regardless of that, it is, like you said, that is just not a way I talk at all. So then I'd leave, not feel the thing. So not only has it not worked, but also on a meta level, I am now lying. I am now have seen evidence of me lying to myself, which on like a additional level, like starts undermining my relationship with my own intuition and sense of self. So you're like double fucking yourself.
Yeah. Double teaming
yourself. Does that
yourself.
make sense? It's like you start, because now I'm like, well, I'm someone who stands every day and looks into the mirror and lies to myself. That's definitely not helping with the confidence as well.
Yes. I think I hadn't thought about it from that angle, but I think you've absolutely nailed it. I think that's exactly
the old double fuck.
The old double fuck.
I think that's the correct terminology.
We're double penetrating our self-love
in not a good way.
Reframe and make it a good way.
That's a great one though.
Yeah.
It's a simple but like cool, maybe I'm meant to feel this.
Yeah, it's not. And like that was the thing, obviously, that's the thing that was relevant to him. Unfortunately, you can't just like cut and paste that onto yourself and be like, maybe I meant to. Like we've got to find the ones that are right for us. But it's been a nice thing that I've just been holding in my back pocket for the last couple of days. And wondering if and when my version of that thing may emerge.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a really nice thing to remember that you don't have to. It's the same thing with like, saying I love you to someone or whatever, showing your love to someone. Some people do that really easily by saying the words and doing it in the like classic ways we know of, like kissing someone and cuddling them and saying I love you. Some people, like, that does not work at all, and you've got a completely different way of showing it, I think. But it's like, it's really good to notice what those things are for you, whether it's giving the love to someone else or to yourself, that it doesn't have to be in a way that you've seen it happen before.
Oh my God. Can I tell you a short, this happened yesterday on this exact point. So we were at a friend's birthday party and I was there with Tom, my partner, and a friend so there's a birthday friend, and then she has another friend who's like a friend on that level of like, she's so lovely, but she's kind of like, we only see her at events through this shared group. Like it's not a relationship we have outside of that.
Yeah.
So she's got this beautiful heart. She's a very warm person, but she's incredibly introverted. And when you first meet her, she can come off as quite prickly and standoffish. But like the second you take the time and invest in just actually speaking to her, she's so warm and so, like lovely. But you do have to kind of crack that exterior. And I think I had the benefit of a shared friend. So I was like, well, there's definitely a reason that my friend is friends with this person, right?
Yes.
So I kind of like gave it the space and so she's gorgeous. So the only other time Tom had met her was 6 months ago at a Thanksgiving event that we were all at. And we arrived yesterday, we're all saying hi, and Tom hugs everyone else in that circle, gets to her, gives her this big, beautiful smile and just says, "Oh, you don't do hugs. How are you?" And I watched her face light up, and it was a reference to at Thanksgiving, he'd gone in for a hug and she'd been like, "No, I don't do hugs." And like in that moment, I know he had been quite jarred by that and it kind of recalibrated and like understood that that's just not a way that she is in the world. And like watching her face this time round feel so seen and like be greeted with warmth and the respect of like we don't have to do this the way I did it for them. But also the fact is like that he remembered this thing and he like acknowledged this thing and was still like clearly so happy to see her, but was like, the way you need love is for me not to hug you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like, I watched her face. Like I watched it mean so much to her. And I was like, that's so beautiful.
And that's so beautiful and such a fucking important, beautiful thing to remember that like sometimes it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not giving the hug, but showing love.
And 6 months later, someone he's met once. And I mean, I think it did probably have, and again, this is not his words, this is me sort of projecting. I think the shock of it maybe the first time did make it the memory for him.
Yeah, of course.
Because I think in that moment, it, like anyone, if you go in to hug someone and they kind of like turn away from that, you'd be like, well, fuck. But
of course. You naturally feel rejected. That's just, you can't help that as a...
Exactly. But like that he sort of synthesized it and like understood it from her perspective and then like treated it with such respect. It was very beautiful.
Aw, good work, Tom.
Good job, Tom.
Well, on that note, maybe we should wrap up. I also really need to pee.
Okay. Me too.
All right, race ya.
Hey, thanks for listening, everyone. You guys are the fucking best.
Agreed. Love you, Alice Edie, and love all of you listening from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, come to our live show. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Imposter Syndrome Club. Please follow us wherever you find your podcasts. And if you're feeling extra kind, rate and review. Or if you got any insights or value from this, share with a friend.
You can also find us on Instagram at ImposterPod or online at impostersyndromeclub.com.